How's it going, everyone? It's a Friday afternoon, almost evening here in Wisconsin, and wanted to do a live stream today. I'll keep it under 30 minutes. For those that don't know, so I'm an attorney in Wisconsin, but I also practice in Minnesota and Iowa. But my main office here, I'm in my main office. This is in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I also have a satellite office closer to my home in Wisconsin, but I do a lot of cases around the other side of Wisconsin and Minnesota and Iowa. It's funny because this afternoon I was at a holiday party for the county bar. So, what's the county bar? The county bar. So, the bar association is a collection of lawyers, and I was asked one time what the bar means, and I looked it up. And from what I can tell, and this, I don't know anyone really knows the answer to this, but it seems to be sort of a shortened version of barrister, which is the name of lawyers, I believe in England and maybe other parts of Europe, but I think specifically England, lawyers or attorneys are called are barristers. And I've also heard it said that bar represents there used to be, or maybe still is, sort of a barrier between judges and lawyers in the courtroom. I'm not really sure actually what bar means, other than we took the bar exam, we're members of bars, each state has its own bar, and then you can have county bars. So this holiday party was just for members of the bar of the county that I'm in. Lawyers, judges. We actually had one of our Supreme Court justices there, which was nice. And but it was mostly for our legal staff. And what one of the thing what so I wanted to talk today was kind of about the judiciary and what the relationship is between lawyers and judges, because a lot of people may not know actually what it's like. And it's kind of timely because yesterday I was reading um, the the monthly magazine. I think it comes out every month for the State Bar of Wisconsin, which is it's a publication I get. And at the back of the magazine, including, it has like legal news and changes in the law and things like that. But in the back, it has kind of like the obituaries, but it has lists of all the lawyers that have been disciplined. Sometimes it's a public discipline. Maybe a lawyer has actually lost their license. Things like, if lawyers get in trouble, maybe they get an OWI, maybe they commit some crime, or, you know, a lot of times what happens is lawyers get um, fast and loose with their clients' money, and they start using trust account money. I did a video earlier this week about trust accounts, what those actually mean. But that's a big no-no. As a lawyer, you can't be borrowing and dipping into your client's trust account. That's a very, very common reason why some lawyers have their license suspended or revoked entirely. But the one caught my attention, and this was in some of them they named the lawyer, which is kind of embarrassing. But a lot of them are like private reprimand. So there was a disciplinary action taken, and they talk about what happened, but they don't name the lawyer or sometimes judge who engaged in the wrongdoing. And so this was a private reprimand of a lawyer who had been um he was I don't know if it was a he or she, was on a Zoom conference call, which is pretty common now. A lot of our court hearings now are done by Zoom or telephone, but mostly by Zoom now, which is, I guess, for everything horrible that happened during COVID, it's been one of the blessings for the legal industry. Is a lot of things that used to require us to travel and show up in court for a short hearing now are done by Zoom, and it actually makes the legal system and the judiciary much more accessible to non-lawyers, to people that would have to take off work otherwise. Sometimes people are attending court from the car on their break, which is great in my opinion. But anyway, so a lawyer was on a Zoom call with a judge and apparently thought he or she had left the court here, left the Zoom stream, but apparently was still on in the background and then started bad mouthing this judge, which is number one, it's ethically you're not well, number one, it's just a bad idea. Like one of the skills you learn as a lawyer is to hold your tongue, especially when you're in front of judges. I've had judges give me a bad time. I've had judges give me, rulings that I thought were wrong or I was unhappy about at the time. But you take it and you smile the whole time. You say, "Thank you, judge." But some lawyers struggle with that, and they really take it personal, and will talk bad about judges off the record, which is also unethical. You actually are not supposed to talk to disparage and talk negatively about judges as lawyers. It kind of trumps your First Amendment rights. I was actually just on a continuing legal education seminar yesterday, and they were reminding us of that. Um, I never had to worry about that because it just seemed like a really bad idea to badmouth judges because I just assume it's going to get back to them somehow anyway. And the last thing I need is to be in court with a judge that knows I've talked trash about him and I don't know it. So I have just always had a policy of keeping my comments to myself when it comes to judges, at least if they're negative. But this lawyer did not realize the judge could hear the whole thing and went on about the judge. And then I think to make matters worse, the judge ordered the lawyer to come into court and answer for what they had said, and the lawyer refused. So then they got I think that's really what got him in trouble is they basically violated a judge's order, which is also unethical. So they got in trouble for that. And it got me thinking. So today I went down to the county bar association party, and as I was walking in the elevator, I ran into one of our judges here, who's been a judge for quite a while. Very good judge. I've tried a number of cases in front of him. The last case was a medical malpractice case that I tried and lost, but I tried a really good case, and he has always complimented me about how I did, even though I lost. He was impressed that the job I did for my client. And so on the way up to the elevator, he's like, "Are you still practicing?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I don't see you down here." I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of weird. I have very few cases here in our local county. None, I don't think, in front of this judge right now. But a lot of my work is kind of spread out across the state of Wisconsin, across Iowa, and across Minnesota. Just kind of the way it works with the nature of my practice. But you know, it's it's interesting because in court, when we're in the courtroom or on a Zoom call, it's all kind of official business, right? Um, and one of the things that you don't have what we call ex parte communications with a judge. So what I'm not allowed to do as a lawyer is send a letter to the judge about our case without copying the other attorney or the other party onto it. I can't stop down to the judge's office. If I run into the judge at, in an event here in town, or even this today, what I'm not allowed to do ethically is talk to the judge about my case just between the two of us. Those kinds of communications are not allowed. It'd be unethical for both of us actually to talk about a case um, without involving the other side, right? Um, so it is always kind of this. We both have ethical duties, right? Judges have ethical duties to that, and we as lawyers do. And so there's always an element of what do I say? Um, we always kind of keep a barrier between us, and that's for our own protection and for our own clients' protection. You're careful about getting too chummy. Um, but you get to know judges, and some of the a lot of these judges are judges who were lawyers that I knew and worked with and had fun with, played softball with, drank beer with, and now they're judges. And so, that relationship changes over time, especially once you've been practicing long enough. Um, but it's nice to get outside of the courtroom and just hang out like normal people. And you remember, yeah, they're just normal people like us. Um, there was one of our judges today was singing karaoke. I had no idea. He's a really good singer. He was up dancing around, singing, and one of the judges that's been here as long as I've been here, one of the first female, I think actually the first female judge in our county, and a person of color, has finally retired. She's sort of thought she was retiring a few times, but now she's actually retiring, and so there was a nice little reception for her. And it's been a while since I had a case in front of her, and I'll be honest, she scares me. E- Even though I mean, she was very intimidating to me as a judge when I was a new lawyer and I would be in front of her. Every judge has a little different personality. Some are very calm and patient, and others are just more aggressive. And you know, she was one that I would say was a little more on the aggressive side, and I had a few experiences early on as a young. We call ourselves baby lawyers, but I was a new lawyer, and I had some cases in front of her, and she just scared me. She still kind of scares me a little bit, but really no reason to be. I've you know been in court a lot since those early days, and but it's sort of like certain teachers. Certain teachers scare you, and certain teachers you kind of get along with. She's one of those judges that always scared me, so I'm happy that she's retiring for that reason. But it was nice. It's nice to hang out and have a beer and chit chat with other lawyers, but the judges. I think that's one of the things I actually enjoy the most about these get-togethers is just to just be casual, normal people and talk about normal things, and specifically not talk about work and talk about shop. So that's um, for those of us that do courtroom work, it is by definition um, adversarial, right? I go into court representing my client. Another lawyer goes in representing his or her client, and the judge is supposed to be in between, is supposed to be neutral. And there are these definite, it is a conflict, even though it's not physical. At least I hope not. It doesn't become a physical conflict in court, but it is a conflict of interest, and we're advocating for each other and arguing and trying to persuade this judge. We're both trying to persuade the judge that our position is better than the others, and so that is and sometimes you have those cases that you are really passionate about, or you have those cases where you feel like your client got a raw deal, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but some of those cases do leave a lasting impression. um and but when you get to these kinds of events, Christmas parties and things like that, we're all just regular people, and some of the people that I actually get along with the best are lawyers that I once had cases against. It's kind of funny how that works. Even amongst lawyers, even though we are in an adversarial relationship, there is a lot of collegiality between most lawyers. Now, some practices I think lend themselves to less of it than others. Um, Maybe family law, but I don't do family law. But the one difference I would say is medical malpractice. In my experience, the medical malpractice, um, th- I've just never really been able to get up to get real warm and chummy with defense lawyers for the medical malpractice bar, and maybe that's just because I just don't do enough of them. But there, we tend to be very formal and combative with each other in medical malpractice more than the other areas of law, which is one of the reasons why one of the reasons I continue to do medical malpractice, although not as much as some, is it it is combative. It is a challenge. You can never really let your guard down, and you always have to be fighting for yourself and your client. And trying cases, I would say, are much more combative and hostile. Maybe not overtly so, but in a normal civil case, personal injury case, it's pretty regular for lawyers to, if one side needs some additional time or needs to reschedule something, usually we find a way to work together. In medical malpractice, I find it's not always that way. And I'm not sure why that is. If the um, defense industry, the insurance industry for the hospitals, they kind of take these cases personally, and in fairness, I can't blame them. I mean, I'm sure if I was a doctor and I was being sued and I was convinced I didn't do anything wrong, I would take this pretty personally, and it seems to uh, kind of bleed into the lawyers themselves. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting profession, and it is definitely much nicer being where I'm at in my career, which is almost 20 years now, as opposed to the first, 5 to 10 years. I always felt like I had an inferiority complex, and you felt, I don't know, much more intimidated by judges and other lawyers than I do now. Now I feel pretty comfortable with myself. I've gotten some experience, and also I think have a reputation as being a good trial lawyer. At least I hope I do. And that does make a difference in your interactions with other lawyers and judges, and kind of how much latitude they'll give you when you need some help. So that's just kind of one of those things that you kind of earn over time. Um, and one of the things that I've also noticed is that the judiciary and even like trial practice is different quite a bit over state. Um, for example, this morning I was on a court call on a case that I'm scheduled to try here in January down in Iowa, and all the lawyers um, had agreed to we need to move the trial date because there's been some scheduling issues and conflicts that have made it so none of us is really ready to try this case. And in Lisa, Wisconsin, if we all approach the judge be like, okay, that's fine. If you guys agree, I'm not going to stand in the way, and they'll just reschedule the trial. But in Iowa, at least in this county, the judge initially denied our motion and said, I need proof that your clients all agree. So we all had to go back to our clients and get a written acknowledgement that they were okay with it. So that to me was very unique. That was kind of um, something I hadn't really seen before in like Wisconsin and Minnesota. One of the other things that I've noticed, and one of the other things that's sort of very different in Iowa versus Wisconsin and Minnesota. In Wisconsin and Minnesota, when you file a lawsuit, um, a judge is assigned to your case at the beginning, and unless someone substitutes that judge, and unless that judge should happen to retire or, let's say, be removed from office, maybe they don't get reelected, they're going to be your judge for every single step of the way, every hearing, trial, whatever. But in Iowa, it's not like that. And this really, it was very weird to me the first time I had some cases in Iowa, because they don't do it that way. The judges rotate around, and the case will be in the county, but they rotate, and so you may show up for a scheduling conference and it's this judge. You may have a motion hearing 6 months later and it's another judge, and then you come to trial and it's a different judge again. That is very unusual, and I'm not sure if that's the case in all of the counties in Iowa, or if it's just some of the more rural ones. But I found that to be fascinating because that was foreign to me when I first started litigating and trying cases in Iowa. Is so we had to reschedule that trial. We had to postpone that trial. I have no idea how long it's going to take to get another trial date. But one of the other things that I've noticed in Iowa, as compared to Wisconsin, is lawyers and judges schedule trials a lot more, and it's really hard to get on the trial calendar. In Wisconsin, and this has changed over the course of my almost 20-year career, is that when I started out, it was kind of regular once a lawsuit was filed to get like a trial date right away or trial dates, and you kind of work up to that. But more and more here in Wisconsin, at least, when you start a lawsuit, you'll have a conference with the judge or court staff, and you'll work out the deadlines. Now we don't even get a trial date right away. We get a bunch of deadlines for like disclosing experts, amending pleadings, completion of mediation, and you kind of work up to like a status or a final pretrial. And then if the case is still going on, then they give you a trial date. And the reason for that is many cases, the vast majority of cases that actually get put in suit don't actually get tried. They get settled before trial. And so what would happen is you'd have courts scheduling all these trials. They would all cancel, right? And then you'd have these big gaps in time because they might not settle until a few weeks or days before trial, and it's not like they could just automatically put other stuff on. And so I think the court system was finding they were losing a lot of time by doing it that way. And so now at least in Wisconsin, they don't really put you on the trial calendar until there's a really good chance that it's actually going to go to trial. It's gone through a lot of the pretrial phases. Iowa still kind of adopts this. We get a trial date like really early on in the case before you really know much about it and how long it might take. Um, but when it comes to scheduling, because of that, lawyers have a lot more trials on their calendar. So, like in Iowa, you know, especially defense lawyers, they'll have a trial day or trial week or multiple weeks on their calendar for almost every case they have. And so when you go to try and get a new date, they're like, "Oh, I'm busy that week. I'm in trial that week." Whereas for me, only a small percentage of my active cases, even those that are in suit, are actually on the trial calendar, and so it makes it easier to schedule trial dates. So what does that mean? That means when it comes to scheduling trials, when we do that, typically we'll get on the phone and the judge will say, "Well, I've got when are you going to be ready?" We'll say 6 months from now. And the judge will say, "Okay, how about the week of August 10th? How does that work for everyone?" I may say, "Yep, that works for me, Judge," and the other lawyer says, "Nope, Judge, I'm already in trial that day." Okay, so the judge would be like, "Well, what about September? What about October? What about November?" And you can get way out there trying to schedule trials. In Iowa, especially, I find it really much more difficult to get on the trial calendar just because there are so many cases on the trial calendar. Almost all the cases that are in suit end up on the trial calendar. Whereas, like I said, in Wisconsin, and I'm not so sure about Minnesota, but especially Wisconsin, it's becoming less and less common to get a trial date until you're into the case a little more, and it's pretty little likely that a trial is going to happen. So those are the kinds of differences. It's kind of one of the reasons I enjoy practicing in multiple states and jurisdictions. It keeps it interesting. Now it keeps you on your toes. You got to remember, oh yeah, the way I do it in Wisconsin isn't how we do it in Iowa, or vice versa. The rules vary, the procedures vary, the forms vary, the fees vary. So it is a challenge sometimes to keep them all straight. But I find it keeps it interesting. It keeps the job interesting. So I enjoy. That's one of the reasons I enjoy the multi-state practice, and I'll probably keep doing it for a while, um, unless maybe I just find I really like doing Iowa truck accident cases or Minnesota malpractice cases or whatever the case may be. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Let me see here. I have some notes. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's about it. So yeah, if people have questions about kind of how the system works, how lawyers relate to other lawyers, how lawyers relate to judges and things like that, feel free to leave a comment. If I can answer it, I'll answer it, or I'll um, maybe do another video on it, whatever the case may be. But feel free to leave a comment if you can. I always appreciate comments, and let me know where you're from and what you're up to. What I would tell people is just caution you. If you do have a legal question, if you feel like you're in a situation where you have a legal question, it's best not to put those in the comments, and or even ask me. Like if you get on the live chat or something like that, those are best to actually talk to a lawyer. If you want to talk to me, I'd be happy to talk to you. You can get on my calendar if you want. It's here. I'll get one of them. Talktocraig.com. That's a Calendly link. So if you feel like you have a legal question and it involves Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Iowa, you can use that link. Get on my calendar. I may not be able to help you, but you can at least try. There's no cost to that. Otherwise, yeah, just follow my channel. I do appreciate you watching my channel and leaving your good comments. And I should be back next week, Monday, around the same time, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. I live stream for about 30 minutes, and you can kind of ask me anything, and I'll do my best to answer. So otherwise, I appreciate you watching, especially anyone who watches the replay of this. Hope you all have a good weekend, and until next time, everyone, have a good one.